Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you for those kind words. Good afternoon from Europe, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the trouble to join into this webinar. I trust that you'll all be able to hear me clearly. I will try and go through my presentation in a slow and measured manner, but bearing in mind that we only have an hour. So, good afternoon. My name is Steve Overton. I'm a trained electrical engineer, and I've been continually engaged in market research since 1982. My engineering background is in switchgear and control systems, working for British, American, and German companies. I entered market research as an assistant to Tony Goulden, the founder of the company, and subsequently became managing director of Goulden Reports on the retirement of the principal partner. I'm a full member of the UK Market Research Society and have travelled extensively, completing projects in over 30 countries, including Eastern Europe, America and Asia. My specialist area of expertise is researching global markets and manufacturing base for heavy capital plant and equipment used in generation, transmission, distribution and utilization of electricity. My paper this afternoon, I will go on to in just a second, to give you a little background on Goulden Reports. It has been in existence since 1983 and has a history dating back to 1970. The company specializes in published and private market research in the global electrical engineering industry. The range of published reports has been in continuous production for over 20 years, and during that time many single client projects have been successfully completed. Traditionally, with respect to the transformer industry, traditionally published reports have provided sales value data, historic and forecast, for various types of transformers, international trade values and regional market share data for the major suppliers. For most of the 4 decades that we've been in the industry, transformer prices have been depressed, and the relationship between sales value and sales volume has remained fairly constant, and the market value information was sufficient for most international marketing purposes. The background to this particular survey is during the last 5 years this situation has been completely reversed. Volatile raw material prices, coupled with unprecedented market demand and rationalisation of the manufacturing base, have seen real price increases, realistic profit margins and huge changes in the value-volume relationship. Against this background, in 2008, Goulden Reports were commissioned by the International Copper Association to undertake a research project with the key aims of establishing on a region-by-region basis the 4 main points you can see there: the current and future market volume and MVA demand for transformers, the current and future number of transformers, demand for copper in transformers, and demand for core steel. The proposed survey methodology that we put forward was following a client briefing. The project entered into a period of desk and internet research. We already had some good historical and forecast data on the market value for transformers for each country, and hence for the world on a regional basis. We also had some good estimates of the sales and ranking of the major suppliers. And we were keen to increase our knowledge of the market demand in kVA terms by size of transformer, and the implication for this on the number and size of transformers, together with data on the copper and core steel demand that was associated with the market volume. Some basic data was obtained from the desk and internet research, and we supplemented this by interviews with industry participants across the whole spectrum of the industry. We found that for power transformers it was possible to translate our data on market values into kVA volume data, and then to relate this into size and hence number of transformers, core steel content, copper intensity, and then ownership and ratio of oil-filled versus dry types. However, for distribution transformers this was quite another problem. There are so many variables in every country market relating to the size, ownership, copper content, aluminium content, cooling and insulating medium, efficiency standards, and variations with respect to copper losses versus iron losses in the specifications, that modelling from market values was not possible, and some very detailed conversion factors were needed to build a model based on kVA volume. And furthermore, because of the disparate and often competitive nature of electricity distribution, comprehensive data for any single country, let alone a complete region, was not available. So together with the client, we conducted a review of the project, and we came to the conclusion that in order to achieve the objective of the project, we needed to address the issue of distribution transformer information, and answers to these issues would be found from the purchasers and users of transformers. To do this, we embarked upon a further program of emailing questionnaires and telephoning the customer base. It is, however, a point of fact that the largest country markets for distribution transformers are those with the most disparately organized distribution system. Conversely, the most comprehensively documented markets are often small countries with monolithic supply structure. So we resolved to research both ends of this spectrum. So the modified research, we therefore determined to collect as many fixed points of information as possible by concentrating our research on the specifiers and users. And rather than attempting to collect complete data sets for any single country, we gathered as many information points as we could, and used this to build up the information, to build up a bottom-up model. This approach prolonged the project, but it did provide us with the best available chances of success. So to come on to the market overview from 2000 to 2012, at the end of the process, these are the key points that we came up with. The global transformer demand in 2002 was about 1172 GVA, and expected to grow to 2100 odd GVA by 2012. That gives a global CAGR of a little over 6%. The copper demand that generated went from 632 million tons in 2002 to 1,200 by 2012. The core steel demand that this generates is 1.47 million tons in 2002, with a 5.7 growth rate, growing to 2.56 million tons by 2012. Just to show you a tabular information that this was extracted from, the total global demand increased, as I've just said, from 1172 to 1604. And interestingly, the demand in Asia and North America was broadly similar. Bear with me if I can find a pointer here. Asia and North America was broadly similar at the start of the period, with Asia 93% of North America. But this situation had changed by the end of the period. And going on to the next slide, we can see forward to 2012. Asia generates still 38% of global demand. Where are we? Here. But it is now twice the size of North America in terms of MVA demand. The demand by number of units, we translated this figure into number of units, and we came to a total of about 4.4 million. This is annual demand in 2002, and this grew to 5.5 million units by 2007. That gives you a CAGR of about 4.7%. And again, the two regions I mentioned earlier account for a little over 70% of global demand. Taking that through to the forecast period, we can see now that from 2007 to 2012, there's a 2.9% growth demand having peaked at 6.9 million units in 2011 and fallen slightly to 6.3 million units by 2012. The copper demand that this translates into was 893,000 tons in 2007. That's a growth rate of 7.1%, and the former Soviet Union, if I go on to the next slide, was the fastest growing at nearly 24% CAGR, whilst North America fell slightly over that same period. And concentrating specifically on the forecast period on this slide, the Middle East region is projected to grow at 8.8% compared with a global rate of 6.2%. So we see good growth carrying on in the Middle East. Moving on to the global core steel demand, in 2007 reached 1.9, almost 2 million metric tons, having grown from little under 1.5 million metric tons in 2002, giving a 6.3% CAGR, which is a higher rate than that which the number of transformers grew at. Going forward again to the forecast period 2008 to 12, growing from 2 million tons to 2.56 million in 2012, again slightly higher than the growth rate in number of transformers. Then the next slide here shows the copper densities, or rather copper intensities I should say, that the demand for copper relates to in terms of kVA demand, and it's broadly even 2002 to 2007 at about 0.5 kilograms per kVA. The region with the highest rate is India here at about it peaks at 0.84 in 2003, and then moving that on into the forecast period, we see that it's predicted that the overall global intensity will increase slightly by 2012, and it's notable that by 2012 the figure for the Indian subcontinent is predicted to have fallen back to about 0.67 kilograms per kVA. Moving on, this next slide is a graphical comparison of the global MVA demand and the copper demand over the period 2002 to 2012. As you might expect, it's broadly in line, but copper slowly increases from 2006 onwards. This gap here increases over that period. Global market concentration. The global market in 2007 is 1,600 GVA. The top 20 countries account for 82% of that global demand. Quite a staggering concentration. Top 10 are 71% of the demand, and the top 5 still account 63% of global demand. That means top 5 countries here, almost half of all over half of all transformers sold. Then global market concentration, the top 10 markets. The situation will not have changed very much over the period to 2012. The top 10 countries will only have declined in dominance by 1% over that period of time. It is still a highly concentrated market. Turning for a moment to the trade in transformers, the most recent year for which, when we did the survey, we could get comprehensive trade data was for 2006. The total trade value in 2006 were about $6 billion out of a global market of $27 billion. This means that turning that the other way around is that 78% of demand is satisfied by domestic production. The trade to market ratio has increased from 30% in 1990, decreased from 30% in 1990 down to the current levels. And in all probability, it's due in part to shifting global demand, but it's also due to the rationalisation of transformer production that's taken place worldwide. Here we have another bar chart analysis. Increase in trade value is clearly seen here. This is for all transformers, trade in all transformers, and again dominated by Western European trade. This next slide is only for power transformers. Power transformers exports show a similar value increase up to $2.5 billion in 2006. Bear in mind this is 2.5 out of a total of 6 billion. So power transformers were 42% of all exports. Again, Western Europe dominates, but the value rise is lower than in the previous slide. And a similar analysis for distribution transformers. The distribution transformer exports have increased dramatically from 2001 through to 2006, partially due to increased prices, it must be said. Western Europe is less dominant, and North America shows quite a large increase. So this slide, it's a bit complicated to look at, but it shows the changes in source of exports during the period 97 to 2006. And one of the immediate things that strikes you is Western Europe has declined from a little under 60% to 40% in 2006, and Eastern Europe has shown the largest sustained increase in exports. And similarly for power transformers, we have a slightly different pattern. Western Europe is still the largest, but not as dominant. Asia increases its size. North America increases, as does Eastern Europe and the FSU. This slide shows the distribution transformer patterns. Exports again dominated by Western Europe in 2006, still over 40%. Eastern Europe has increased. South and Central America, Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, Africa together, it's noticeable that the other areas of the world, the trade only accounts for about 10% of the global total. So overall conclusions are the majority of the 6 billion export trade is within local regions. Highest levels are in excess of 90%, that's power transformers in North America, and lowest levels are 5%, which is power transformers in the Indian subcontinent. And generally levels of trade within regions in distribution transformers is higher than that for power transformers. And here we have a table reiterating that fact. Note the highest levels of overall trade within region are North America and the Middle East. That's trade within region. The lowest trade within region is the Indian subcontinent, but if you turn that statement on its head, then that has the largest extra regional trade out of all regions. Now we're on to power transformers, and note nearly all, 95% of exports from North America are within the region. Very high percentage, and by contrast, less than 1% for India are within the region. And a similar picture with distribution transformers. The highest within region trade is the Middle East, with 81% of trade, but unlike power transformers, the lowest region is still India, but the spread is much narrower. The lowest is 17%, so there is a good deal more trade within regions. Forgive me for these slides. The only thing that you can pick out of it is the outstanding figures here. It just reiterates what we showed from a second ago. That's all transformers. This is power transformers. Again, you can see the very large inter-regional trade, and similarly with distribution transformers, and it does illustrate the fact that there is a much lower peak to trough, or highest to lowest rather, spread. I come now on to some graphs which again just illustrate the differences between power and distribution transformers. And the Western Europe distribution transformer trade is within region is far higher than power transformers, but it has reduced significantly from 1997. The pattern for Eastern Europe and the FSU is completely different. It's increased interregional trade generally, but mostly for distribution transformers. Africa, again, a totally different pattern. In Africa, distribution transformer trade, most is within the region. It's remained relatively high at 70%. Power transformer trade within region has fallen. This means quite obviously that the power transformer trade is going out of region from Africa. The Middle East produces a very nice pattern here. All trade within region increasing. Interesting shape. And the Indian subcontinent pattern is quite complex. However, note that the maximum within region is only just over 25%. Again, there is a lot of trade from without the region. Asia and Australia. You can see the shape here. Both power transformers and distribution transformers, levels of interregional trade are falling. South and Central America. Note the fall in power transformer trade within the region from 99. It falls off dramatically. Less so with distribution transformers. North America, this includes Mexico. I make that point because of the huge trade between US, Mexico. It shows up within region here. If all three countries are considered, Mexico, Canada and the USA considered as one region, the interregional trade is up to 80% for both power transformers and distribution. Moving on now specifically to distribution transformers. This slide summarizes the distribution transformer market as we found it and as we predict that it will grow. 580 GVA in 2002, rising to 940 GVA by 2012, gives a growth rate of a little under 5%. The copper increase going from 440 odd thousand tons going up to 760 at the same time, a slightly higher growth rate. And the percentage of copper within distribution transformers rising slightly. Oil field transformers will account for 93% of demand throughout the period, and utility companies overall account for 70% of purchases, and the regional variations going from 60% to 77%. So although there is a large industrial market, the utility market still is by far the biggest single sector. This slide then shows MVA demand for distribution transformers is forecast to increase over the period to a total of 941 GVA in 2012, and this is dominated again by Asia with nearly 50%, and then North America and Western Europe with 16% and 11% respectively. This translates into in number of units, about 4.4 million units in 2002, going up to 5.5 million units in 2007, and forecast to increase to 6.3 million units in 2012. And again, the two very large areas of demand in terms of number of units are shown there. How does this translate into copper demand? This slide shows the demand for copper generated by distribution transformers has increased from 443,000 in 2002 to a little under 600,000 in 2007, and rising again to 760,000 tons in 2012. 6% overall, 5% from 2007 to 2012, and 5.5 2002 to 12. Copper percentages, copper usage in distribution transformer, despite the recent high copper price versus aluminium, we still see 75% right the way through, and rising to 80% by the end of 2012. So despite the disparities in price levels, we see no wholesale change away from copper towards aluminium. The fundamental redesigns and other factors mitigate against that change. Percentage of distribution transformers that are oil filled, again 2002 right the way through to 2012, fairly consistently 93% of distribution transformers will and will remain oil filled. The areas with highest levels of dry type use are in Western Europe and North America. Still only 88% oil filled. Coming on now to the ownership. As I said earlier, the utility industry is still by far the largest customer for distribution transformers, and will remain so. The highest levels are in the Indian subcontinent, Africa, and the former Soviet Union was 77, 75 and 74% respectively. Moving on then to manufacturers' market shares. These are our estimates, and we estimate that ABB is by far the largest supplier of transformers, with an overall global market share of 15.6%. Siemens second at 10.1%, and Areva third. These 15 manufacturers together account for about 80% of global markets, of global production. Breaking this down into estimated sales by region in 2006, we have this table as shown here. I don't propose to go into detailed description of that, but I'll just leave it there for a couple of minutes, given the fact that the EU participants are from various parts. I'm sure you are interested to pick up your own particular region. And moving on from that, these are our estimates of MVA sales that equates to. Again, I'll leave that there for a few minutes, just to let you peruse the figures that are in there. And now moving on to global efficiency requirements. There is a general movement worldwide towards higher efficiency products and standards. Trends, however, are not regional but vary from country to country, even within the same region. I've put up here a few of the major points that have come out of the research. For power transformers, the efficiency levels generally are thought to be optimum, or at least at acceptable levels. And it must be remembered that a majority of the power transformer products are to an extent tailor-made for purpose. So the purchaser has the opportunity to specify exactly what it is that he wants, and always has had that. Again, it's a different situation often with distribution transformers, and the old argument is still being played out with respect to distribution transformers. The lifetime cost of ownership may be proven to be much lower on a new high efficiency transformer, but utility companies are still loath to increase capital spend to realize a 30-year saving. They're concerned about returns over the next 2 or 3 years. This slide is an attempt to show the gradual migration that we have seen going from a light yellow to dark green is where the standards are increasing. We've put on this some comments of the current situation and moves that are coming in the not too distant future. And as you can see, by 2012 we are not dark green anywhere. In fact, it goes off the end of this to your guesses is probably as good as mine. I'd say 2015 or thereabouts, before it all becomes a dark green colour. And very lastly, the conclusions, just to reiterate: global transformer demand 1172 GVA in 2002, doubling almost by 2012, 6% CAGR. Global distribution transformer demand going up from 580 to 941 GVA, a slightly lower increase. Copper rising from 632 up to 1206, that's 6.67, and global distribution transformer, I beg your pardon, copper increased from 440,000 to 760,000 over the same time frame. Core steel demand from 1.5 million tons in 2002, 2.56 by 2012. Distribution core steel 1.1 rising to 1.8, 5% growth rate. No migration towards dry type transformers, and utility companies still on 70% of all transformer purchases. That concludes my presentation. I'm sorry if there was a lot of information there to try and take in over a relatively short period of time. I hope I didn't make it too boring. I thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening. Back over